Hello everyone. Wanted to make another set of videos for you guys regarding assignments week 7, first one as well as the second one. So we'll start with assignment 7-1 for now. In front of us here you can basically see again Visual Studio. I am using 2007, and I opened up the IT665 project again from scratch, as if it's brand new. So even the changes that we made previously in week 4, I believe, they're not going to be reflected in this project. Okay. So the assignment 7-1 is asking us to create a web form so we can add customers to our database, and also use form validation to make sure that the proper information is captured and it writes to the database, and then we need to verify that it has been written to a database. So this in Visual Studio, there are different ways you can create web forms, and the approach that we've been using so far with this project is the MVC, ASP.NET MVC, which is models, views, and controllers. So as you can see here, we already have a folder for controllers, which is the C part of MVC. We have models, which is the M in MVC, and then we have views, which is the V in MVC. The first thing I would like to do is I'd like to modify our navigation bar. Remember the top part where it has home, search products, search customers, logout. I would like to add another link, basically to say add customers, okay, because that's what we want to do when I create a web form that adds customers. So I'm going to go in my views. That's where the file that I need to access, and then shared, and then layout. In case you're asking, the .cs HTML, basically it's a combination of CS, which is C#, as well as HTML. So that's why this long, weird extension. All right, so let's open up layout. And if you remember also from the week 4 assignment, all we did really here was just copy and paste some information. So again, as you can see, this is not close to what we did in, it's missing the information that we did in week 4. But I'm going to basically do the same thing. I'm just going to copy these 1, 2, 3, 4 lines, and then I'm going to paste them. So basically what this is saying is, if you're a customer manager, and again, I'm going to be logging in as admin, so an admin is a customer manager, I want to show this extra link. So I'm not going to be searching for customers, but I'm going to be adding customers. So I'm going to modify this to say add, and I'm going to modify this to be customer add. Okay, and we'll get to that part in a moment. So basically, if I run my application, and again, if you guys remember, to run the application, click on the debug start button. Let's see, I can click on it. It's going to take a few seconds to run. Well, first it's going to build the application. As you can see down here, if everything goes well, it's going to say build succeeded. Give it a few seconds. It's compiling, then it's going to build, and then it's going to run. And it's running on my local machine, which is the virtual desktop. In case you're asking, the :8328, that's a port number. Now, typically web servers or websites, they run on port 80. So if you go, for example, to google.com, you don't see a :80 because it's the default port. If you run the website on any other port than 80, then you have to specify : and then the port number. All right. So let's log in as admin. And my computer is kind of slow. It's not the fastest of computers. So now you see here that I have add customers. Now if I click on it, it's not going to work. I get a 404 error, which is resource not found, because I did not add the customer add link that I specified in my code. This guy here, customer add. All right, so I'm going to stop it. At least now I know that the change that I just made has worked. Okay, so I'm going to stop my debugger, and next step is I'm just going to go down the line of adding the MVC. So I'm going to start with the M, which is models, and there are some subfolders under models. I'm going to create a new subfolder. To create a subfolder or to create a folder, you just right-click in the location that you want to add it, and then you say add, and then new folder. Okay. So I'm just doing this for organizational purposes. All right. I want to separate my add function from my search function. So I'm going to create an add folder. Then I'm going to add an existing file, which I'm going to give you. I'm going to zip it up. Actually, this solution is a courtesy of one of my students. She was gracious enough to share her files with us. Again, in the interest of time, I thought it would be, since it was pretty flawless code and captured everything, I said, I reached out and asked if I could use her code instead of me recreating from scratch. And she was humble and welcoming, and I said, yes, I'd love to help everyone out. So I'm going to add her existing code. So again, I right-click, say add, and then I go to existing item because the document is already there. And again, I'm gonna zip it up and share it with the class. So click on existing item, and then I have to navigate to where this document is saved. So I saved it in my documents folder, and then IT665 week 7 files, and then 7-1. And we're adding models. So click on models, click on add. Again, this is just me organizing my files. You can throw them all into one folder. It's up to you, but that's how I organize my computer files and folders. I'm going to add two files. I'm going to add the customer add, and I'm going to add the customer add results. The customer add is going to be the part of the interface to add the customer, and then or actually the back end or the behind the scenes information. And then the customer add results is going to be also the behind the scenes code to display the results of our of the results of the customer that we just added. All right, so I'm going to do a Control A, so it highlights both files. Basically, it's a shortcut for highlight everything. And I'm going to click on Add. And what this should do is this should throw it in here for us. Okay, I'm going to get into the details of the files in a few minutes. But for now, I just added these two files. So that's my M in MVC. I've added the models. Now let's go to the V, which is views. And again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to right-click. Again, for organizational purposes, I'm going to add a new folder. Again, you don't have to do it this way, but again, that's just like you organize your school files in folders and subfolders. Same thing with code as well. Then I'm going to right-click. I'm going to add existing items. And then I'm going to navigate to my files. And I also have a views folder. And I have an add. And it's just one file that I need to add. Okay, so now I have models added. I have views added. Now I need to go to C. So controllers. Controllers, I'm not going to create an add. I'm just, since all of them are just thrown in there, we have a base controller, index controller, search controller, security controller. I'm going to add just another controller and call it add controller. So I'm just going to right click on controllers. I'm going to add an existing item again because I do have the code already made for me. And again, that will be provided for you. I go to where it's located, and here it is on my computer. Again, you have the choice to throw it anywhere you want. And add controller. So if everything goes well, I should run this code and it should work correctly. So let's give it a shot. I'm going to run it in debug mode. Again, it's going to compile, and if everything goes well, it's not going to throw any errors. Okay, looks like it took it. Now it's going to open up in a browser. Okay, this is the old window. I can close that while this one loads. Again, I do apologize for my slow computer. All right, here we go. So let's log in. Admin. Now if I click on Add Customers, I should get something. Okay, so it did not find my page. All right, let's try to troubleshoot, see what's wrong. I backtrack my steps. The first thing I added was that layout page. I modified it. And in looking at it, remember I copied and pasted these 4 lines. I modified the add customers, customer add, but I did not modify search. Okay, search needs to be add because again I'm using add as a sub folder. So let's make this update. Add. Now let's run it. And again, once it comes up, I'm going to log in again as admin, click on add customers, and it should work this time. So let's give it another run, admin, click on add customers. There we go. All right, so from this web form, basically I'm adding a customer, and these are the details that we need to add. So I'm just going to fill a form like you do with any form. Some data fields are going to be mandatory. So let's say Mr. Again, I've filled this out before, so that's why it's kind of loading pre-names for me. Okay, so first name, let's call it Linda. Again, here it says please enter the middle name or initial, and new customer leave blank. So this is kind of telling me that this field can be left blank. This one doesn't have this leave blank option, so it looks like I have to have it in there. And remember, part of this assignment is to do field validation, required field validation, as well as check if the data is correct or not. And last name, let's call it Johnson. I'm going to leave the suffix, well, actually, let's call her Junior. And email, these are the options. I'm going to say do not wish to receive email. All right, so I'm going to do submit. All right, now it did not submit, and the reason is because, as you can see here, data validation is working. It says title can only accept letters. Well, I have letters, but I also have a dot in there, so I need to erase this. Okay, now let's test something else. Well, let's erase Linda, which is a required field. And I'm going to submit, and it should hiccup, and it did. And basically say that the first name field is required. So that's, again, another way to check that it is working for us. All right, so I think I fixed everything. Let's try to submit. And since it didn't come back as red, that means it did take. And remember, we added another search results right under the page. So now it says that it did add Linda Johnson to my table. And if I go into my database, see if I'm going to have time or not. Show desktop. I'm going to go into my SQL server. Come on, open up. All right, I'm going to log in, connect. I want to expand database, go to AdventureWorks, go to table, and it should have added a new person for me. I'm going to right-click on person, select top 1000, and I'm going to order by, actually I can do a where, since I know the name, or first name, and and I was looking for the person I just added, which is Linda Johnson. So this is the query that comes up. I'm just going to customize it for first name equals, and it's Linda. Let's see if I only have one Linda. I'm going to execute it. Okay, so I have a lot of Lindas. So where first name equals Linda and last name, we said there was Johnson. And if I do a F5, which is short for the execute, there we go. So this is my Linda that I just added. And also, if you remember, I gave it a junior suffix. I did give her a Mr. for the title. So again, this definitely is the user that I just added. All right. Now, there are a lot of fields in here. Some are required, some are not. To find that out, you can basically just expand the person table, expand columns, and here it will tell you which ones are cannot be null. Again, not null means it cannot be null, and which ones are nullable. So title is not required, first name is not null, so that means it is required, and so on and so on and so on. Okay, so this is again another validation that, or verification that it was added to my database. To look at the nitty-gritty of some of the code, again, I can stop it from running. Again, this is the layout page where we updated the navigation bar. The controllers, the one that we added here. Yeah, this is the part that has the actual SQL code, which is this very long line. But let me go through it kind of. Again, some of you might know what this means. Some of you might not understand it. But basically, we want to add a customer to our person database, to our person table in the AdventureWorks database. Now, to add a person to the person database table, there is a constraint with the business entity table. Okay, they're kind of linked together. So I have to add the person to the business entity table first because there's a constraint. And once I add that person to the business entity table, then I can add the person to the person table. So what this query is doing, this SQL query, is basically saying I'm going to insert, okay, into the business entity table, okay, which is under person, which is under AdventureWorks. And in open parentheses, I'm going to add, these are the columns that I need to add to, okay, row GUID. Again, GUID is a global unified ID, which is hexadecimal. It's a 64-bit hexadecimal, I think. It's a very, very long value, and it's unique. So again, we need to add a unique identifier. So we're going to add a unique identifier to this new person, and again, to the business entity table, and we're going to add the modified date. So obviously, these are the required values that we have to add. Okay, so these are the column names, and then the query continues with values. So what are the values? Well, I'm going to give it a new ID. New ID is a built-in function in SQL that lets you that lets the SQL server come up with a unique identifier. And then the get date is another built-in function in SQL that captures the date, time, and stamp of the moment that we add this user. Okay, so that's the first step. We're just, and since it ends with a, here's a semicolon, that's the end of the query. All right, so all we're doing is, for this whole query is we're going to add, we're going to insert into the business entity table a new record with a new row global universal ID and a date, and the values are going to be the new ID, which is again computer generated, as well as the get date function, which gives us the exact current date and time. All right. Basically, if I go into my business entity, here we go, and I open it up, you can see here that the row GUID and it has 3 columns. There's the business entity ID, and then there's the row GUID and the modified date. So if I want to see the last one that I did, I can say order by modified date, and I'm going to do a descending order so that it's the very last one that got added. So if I do execute, now the last one that was added was this guy here. It's today's date, and it was added at 9:38. And if you look at the time, it was 9:57 now. So this was added about 20 minutes ago, give or take. All right, and it added a business entity ID of 21,779. So if I go in my person, person table, which is here already, and I look at my Linda user that I just added, you can see now that this is the same number. And this is the tying, this is the constraint that links both tables together. So in my business entity ID, this is the primary key, and it links to this foreign key in the person table, and it's the same number. So that's how you can link both tables together. That's how you can join both tables together. Okay, so going back to the code, this is what this first part of the query does. Okay, so we added into the business entity table. Then we need to also add the user into the person table. So continuing on with the same line of query, now we're going to say insert into person, and open parentheses, I'm going to insert these columns: person entity ID, person type, name style, blah, 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 all the way on, oops, I guess I can't do it that way. Let me do it gently. So I'm going to insert all these column names. Oh, there we go. And then once these are all column names, then I'm going to start saying, well, what do I insert in them? Well, I'm going to give it the values of each column. And the entity ID, which I just entered, I need to capture that, the business entity ID, and I need to capture from what I just entered, what I just inserted into the business entity ID table. I need to insert it into my business, into my person table. Again, sorry, this might be a little bit confusing, but bear with me for just a few moments. So in my very first column, which is the business entity ID in the person table, this is the value of the business ID that I need to enter. So I'm basically saying, go back to the business table entity ID. So select the very first one, so the very first entry from business entity ID here. Okay, business entity ID, and then order the business entity ID in descending order, kind of like what I did. Why do we do that? Because it's going to return the very last thing that I just added. And again, since it picks the top one means the very first one. You can do a select star, which is going to give you everything, but you don't want that. We just want the very top first record. And this is going to give us the value of the business ID that I just created, and I'm going to capture that and then throw it into the person. And then continuing on, these are the values that I want to insert in my person. Now notice that some of them have a value in single quotations. These are hard-coded, and then the others have an @ sign before them. So the @ sign is basically a parameter or a variable that's going to be captured from this code. And again, we see some nulls because some are nullable. And new ID is basically, again, the built-in function to get us a hexadecimal value. And then the get date also is the built-in function for our date and timestamp. So this query here, again, remember the semicolon means that the query is ending. So this whole query here, all that it's doing is it's inserting a new record into the person table, and it is capturing values. And one of the values is the business entity value that we just entered a moment ago. Oops, 124. There we go. So it's a pretty long SQL statement. Okay, so the first one, which is this guy here on the left, this added to the business entity, and then the next one, it's adding to the person. And then the very last query is, again, if you remember, once I add the customer, I display him or her right away. So this is the query that shows or displays the person that we just added, and I'm only going to show two columns, the first name and the last name. Okay, and I'm ordering them by the business entity ID in descending order because I just want the very last one that I just added. Okay, and speaking of these values or the parameters, here they are again. They're the ones that are follow, or there is an @ sign before them to indicate that these are parameters that I want to add to my query. Okay. So I guess that's all that I wanted to show for the 7-1 assignment. Again, this code is going to be provided for you. I know it was a challenging and difficult assignment, so that's why I am providing the code. But this code that I will be providing does meet all the requirements for the assignment. So what I'm asking for you to do is set it up just the same way I showed you in these two videos. Make sure that it runs, make sure that it works. And this should conclude this assignment. All right, so I'm going to wrap up this video, and then I'm going to start on the other videos for assignment 7-2 as well. I hope this was helpful, and I'll talk to you in the next videos. Take care.